Chapter 14, titled The Day Mr. Reinhardt Ticks Off His Glass. Serious, that's right there, see? I got into my pajamas and puttered around my room a bit, putting stuff away. For some reason, I didn't feel like going to bed, and I definitely wasn't sleepy. When I was little, I believed Santa would be creeping into my room at this time on Christmas morning, making sure I was asleep before he filled my big red sock. And I'd have been struggling to stay awake so I could catch a glimpse of him. But it sure wasn't the hope of seeing Santa that kept me awake tonight. Too many things on my mind, too much jumbled around in my head. The missing sleeping bag, Nick, the gift giving. I looked at my bike picture. What had he done with the one he'd taken of my mom? His Christmas gift to himself. I said out loud, because he loves her. I knew it, and I knew I was beginning to accept it. There was nothing else to do. I thought about Angelica, and I wished I'd told Mom about her being here. I couldn't decide why I hadn't. In a way, I wished I'd told Mom about the sleeping bag, too. Well, I hadn't told her that either. It didn't matter. My stamp album was in the drawer of my desk. I got it out. And then I emptied Angelica's stamps from their envelope, lined them up in front of me, and went carefully through my album page by page. Every single one was a duplicate. That made me sad, especially when I remembered how she'd saved them for me all year. Working carefully, though, I took out all the repeats I had, replaced them with Angelica's, and put the originals back in her envelope. There. Why did you do that?
Because he liked her.
Because he likes her. It must be about 1:30, I decided. Miss Coriander and Miss Sarah's car had lumbered up the driveway a half hour ago. Christmas morning and midnight mass was over. Everyone would have stood around on the sidewalk outside the church with its big lighted candle in the window, wishing each other Merry Christmas, teary and happy, the way people always are after midnight mass. I could still remember Mom had stopped going when Dad got sick, and she'd never started again. Maybe she would if she and Nick... I clicked off my lamp, got into bed, and lay watching the moon shadows, pale as ghosts on my ceiling, counting on my fingers the things I knew for certain that had been taken. My sleeping bag, Mom's clock, the flashlight, food. Wait a sec. I propped myself up on my elbow across the room. My mirrored self looked back at me, pale and shimmering blur. Sleeping bag, flashlight, clock, food. It sounded like supplies for a camping trip. Someone going off who didn't have the right equipment and didn't... Hey, what about my pup tent? It was always kept in the left-hand corner of the garage, covered with spiderwebs and dust. It had been there so long I didn't even notice it anymore. Was it still there? I sat up, lay down again. I would check in the morning because if it had disappeared too, I was on the right track. Maybe this meant it had been a kid. No grown-up real thief would take that kind of stuff and leave money and watches. He could even have had the stereo on the TV. The thought that it might be a kid didn't seem so scary. I punched up my pillows and turned my face to the wall. Had that tent been there when Robbie and I went over the garage stuff? Today with Angelica? I hadn't paid attention to anything when she was there except her IWAKFC. If I was going to lie here awake, I should concentrate on figuring out what that meant, not hassle my head about this other stuff. But what about the tent? The last time I'd used it, Robbie and I slept in his backyard under the plum tree, and plums fell on us all night long. At first, we thought it was bird droppings, but pretty soon we figured it out. Huh, a purple-pitted pup tent, Robbie said in the morning. Had the guy taken it? No way was I going to be able to sleep without knowing for sure. I got up, went down the hallway past Mom's half-open door, past the dining room with its bare, empty table, bigger with the extra leaves we'd put in so we'd all have room at dinner time. What were those faint creaking sounds? I stopped, listening. The creaking stopped too. Maybe the floorboards in here were squeaky. I'd never noticed. I tiptoed on, and then I heard the creaking again. I was in the kitchen, the linoleum cold and clammy under my bare feet. No sounds now, nothing but the night quiet and the chirp-chirp of a mockingbird in the tree outside. My chest was bursting. My ears ached from listening. Silence. I was just about to take another step when I heard a small thud, soft and muffled. It came from the laundry room. Someone was in there, not 5 feet from where I stood. The cold clamminess was all over me now. Thoughts started inside my head and never finished themselves. How did he get in? What was he doing? Should I run back and wake up Mom? Should I yell? If only I had the blackthorn stick, I could. Oh, the wooden block with our kitchen knives stuck in it. It was on the counter. All I had to do was slide out a knife. I could never use a knife, not on anybody, not for any reason. The wooden cutting board was beside it, small and square with a sturdy handle. Could I hit someone with this if I had to? If I had to. But I wouldn't have to. I'd take one quick look and retreat. I picked up the board and went soundlessly forward, carefully, very carefully, easing my head around the door. The laundry room window was a rectangle of dusty moonlight. The washer and dryer, 2 cubes of reflecting light. A figure stood with his back to me at the bottom of the steps that came down from the attic. His hands still gripped the upper rungs. He'd been up there. The creaking had been him coming down. He'd been up there all the time. That was what I'd been sensing and feeling. I was shivering as if I had the flu, and I sucked in a deep, quivery breath and tightened my grip on the handle of the cutting board. He was small, this person. He probably wasn't any bigger than I am. That gave me courage. If he'd been a big guy or a monster guy. I licked my dry lips. What I had to do now was leap forward and... You can't hear someone lick his lips. So it had to be that he sensed me behind him. He spun around and we were looking directly at each other. T-shirt, jeans, bare feet. One side of him was in moonlight, the other in shadow. You've been staying up there, haven't you? I whispered. You've been there for days and days. My voice was rising in spite of myself. He put a finger to his lips. Shh, he whispered. I'd never seen him before in my life, but I knew who he was.
Oh, come on!
What's wrong?
You're right, you did tick me off.
What? I ticked you off?
I'm excited. I reached a new theory.
Oh, goody, goody!